We're just going to wait a few minutes to see, to let people join.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Little Big Green Nudges webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping updates. This session will be recorded and will be made available on our YouTube page, which I'm going to share now quickly. Okay. There are two functions in the Zoom. For questions, please use Q&A box that you see on the right. Or by raising hands. And there's another function for you to actually write your name and affiliation so that we know who's here today. My name is Mari Nishimura. I work for United Nations Environment Programme. So once again, welcome to the pilot campuses and those who are simply interested in this nudging people for sustainable actions. Thank you so much for being here today. As you may know, this all started with the Little Book of Green Nudges we published last year in partnership with the Behavioral Insights teams and GRID-Arendal. This is UNEP's first on behavioral science and nudge theory, which focused on human actions and how to change them. Some of you have directly contributed this book by providing case studies, so thank you so much for this. So far, we have 136 universities around the world using this book to use green nudges on their actual campuses. Some are run by student groups, catering managers, professors, faculty members, and others are CSR officers. So it's really made for anyone who's interested. Today's webinar is unique because although we've been offering a series of webinars for universities, this is the first time we organize at the time suitable for North American universities. So for many of you, I believe this is the first one. Because of that, I just want to show you a very short video about this project. Rob, would you mind playing the video, please? Thank you. We're also featured on CNN program earlier this year, so please take a look at that too on our YouTube page that you see on the chat box. You can see other webinars recordings too there, both in English and Spanish. So without further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce you to our speakers today. We start with Dr. Jessica Barker, former advisor at the Behavioral Insights team in London, and the co-author of the book, and Mr. Andreas Ans, the head of climate of the Ikea group, and Dr. Javier Font, Dr. Javier Font, a professor at the University of Surrey. And finally, we have Miss Amy Kadri, sustainability coordinator of the University of Rochester. Thank you all for being here today. And after the presentation, it's absolutely like totally open space for anyone here to come in and ask questions or share experience with us. So take this opportunity to share your great initiatives. So let us welcome the first speaker, Dr. Jessica Barker. Jessica is a co-author of the Little Book of Green Nudges, written while she was an advisor on the environment and sustainability team at the Behavioral Insights team in London. Now based in Alaska, she's the data lead for the Alaska COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force and advises the state government on incorporating behavioral insights into its COVID-19 response. Jessie, the floor is yours.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Marion. Thanks. It's such a pleasure to be here and just to see what's been happening with the Little Book of Green Nudges since we published it a year or so ago. So thanks, and good morning from Alaska. And since this is kind of a general webinar rather than a specific theme, I thought I'd just kind of touch on a few highlights from the Little Book of Green Nudges and talk about some exciting nudges that I've come across recently that will hopefully be inspiration for you guys in some of your own projects. And of course, we'd love to hear about some of your own projects later on as well. So since it's early morning over here and probably sometime in the morning where most of you are, let's just start with a quick exercise to help everyone wake up a bit. So I'm going to show you some words here: bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, doze, slumber, snore, nap. Oops. Oh, okay. Peace, yawn, drowsy. Okay, I'm going to give you, let's say, 15 seconds. And I want you to write down as many words as you can remember. And since we've got, we don't have videos up right now, I'm just going to trust you guys to keep track of how many words you remember when we go through them afterwards. So let's do another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so hopefully you would have written some of these words down. Let's see. And again, I'm going to just trust you to keep track of these yourself since we don't have video for the participants. So snore, wake, let's see if you've written those down. Blanket, nap, sleep. And if you've written down sleep, then you're not alone, because, oops, my computer's kind of frozen here, not a very opportune moment. Oh, if you write down sleep, then it's not actually on the list here. But if you did write down sleep, you're in good company, because about half of people when they do this exercise usually write down sleep, even though it's not actually on the list. And if you're familiar with the idea of nudges, then you're probably kind of getting why I'm doing this exercise. So this is an example of just how our brains work when we've got limited memory capacity. We've got a lot of information to integrate. And unlike how the kind of traditional view of human decision making, we're not these kind of hyper rational computers. We don't have as much time in the world as we want to make decisions. We take shortcuts. We use rules of thumb. And what we remember can be influenced by other cues that are around us. All of the other words in that list were to do with sleep. So that kind of cued us into thinking that sleep might also be on the list. So let's think about some other ways in which our decision making happens. So again, kind of a theme here. Which coffee would you like? I've got my own right here. If you're like most people, then you choose the middle one here. But what if I then offered you something like this? And again, if you're like most people, you'd probably choose the middle one, but now the middle one is bigger than it was before. And of course, this isn't, this is nothing new. If you ever go into a coffee shop, you know, they take advantage of these kind of biases in decision making all the time. But again, this shows us that our decision making is very heavily influenced by context. We've already talked about memory, and now preferences, which aren't some kind of fixed property of an individual, can very heavily be influenced by context and what other options are available. And now let's do another example. So if I ask you which of these two squares is lighter or darker than the other, most people think the one in the bottom right is lighter, but they're actually exactly the same color. It's just influenced by the background. So there's a bit of a lag time in my screen here. So we've got judgment can be influenced by context as well. And so the point of these are kind of trivial exercises, but the point is that these contextual influences have, they do affect our decision making, and that these can have real consequences. So memory, the first one with the sleep exercise, this can have real implications. For example, a lot of legal procedures are determined by what people remember in court. Preferences, there's a study showing that when patients in a care home towards the end of their lives were offered what they were offered as a default to procedures to kind of extend their lives versus just let them kind of live peacefully for less time, that influenced kind of what they chose, what the default option was. And so this again is a real kind of life or death situation. And again, with judgment, how we're judging distances and what kind of visual cues are in the environment, such as these yellow lines on the track, have again real life or death consequences. So the point of this, and of really the whole kind of concept of nudge theory, is that our brains use heuristics and biases to make decisions. This was popularized in the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. If you haven't read it, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's what kind of really got me excited in this field from the start. And the kind of main idea of the book, where the title comes from, is that we have kind of two parallel ways of making decisions and processing information, which Kahneman calls fast and slow, system 1 and system 2. And system 1, the kind of fast processor, is when we make kind of really simple intuitive decisions. If I asked you what 2 times 2 is, you probably wouldn't need to think to tell me that the answer is 4. If I asked you to imagine your commute to the office, for those of you not working remotely, you'd probably just be able to kind of automatically turn left and right the streets without really thinking it through. But in contrast, if I asked you to calculate something more complicated, like 24 times 17, you probably need to sit down and work it out. And for the next time you can travel, planning a trip overseas, that's again, even pre-COVID, that was something that required a bit more thought. And so the main point of this is not just that we have these two systems, but that often we assume we're using this slow system 2, when in fact a lot of our decisions are made by system 1 creeping in. And we're not saying that this is a bad thing, we're just acknowledging that it happens and saying that given that this is how people do actually make decisions in practice, we need to take this into account when we're designing any programs or policies or services that are based around human decision making. And of course, that is, a lot of things, pretty much everything. So much of what we're thinking about, both in terms of sustainability, but also many other policy areas, is really built around human decision making. And that idea was popularized by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their book Nudge around 10 or so years ago. And since then, kind of nudge theory has really taken off in public policy. The behavioral insights team, where I used to work when I co-wrote the Little Book of Green Nudges, was the first government behavioral science unit. And since then, there have been many others, and also many companies and nonprofits have been incorporating behavioral science and nudge theory into their operations as well. So just as another couple of quick examples, this is, I think, a great example of how you can kind of use these cognitive shortcuts that people are kind of using in their decision making, how we can harness those in services. So if this is a road in London where I used to live, if you look at these, what looks like speed bumps on the road to slow traffic down, these are actually just flat lines painted on the road. But I used to cycle down this road pretty frequently, and it kind of tricked me every time. So this is harnessing these kind of propensity to have these optical illusions, like that earlier example I showed you. So really using what we know about the kind of shortcuts and rules of thumb that our brains are taking. So I think this is a great example. But unfortunately, these kind of examples are relatively rare. And I think what you come across more often are things like this, where we design some kind of service or program for people. We have this kind of idealistic view of how people will behave. without taking into account how people actually behave. And what we end up with is it not being used in the way it was designed, or that we just don't achieve the impact that was intended. So really the kind of core idea of nudge theory is take into account kind of what we actually know about behavior and designing our policies and programs and services around that. So what do we actually know about how people behave and make decisions? Well, talking about kind of rules of thumb and memory, we wanted to make it easy to remember. So as I'm sure you know, if you've read the Little Book of Green Nudges, we have an acronym to make that easier to remember. So if you want to encourage a behavior, make it easy, attractive, social, and timely. So our acronym EAST. And of course, we have information on that on the Little Book of Green Nudges. The Behavioral Insights team also has another publication on EAST on its website if you're wanting more information. So I'm going to just give you a quick example of a nudge in each of these categories, which hopefully will spark some questions and discussion later in this session. So easy, let's think about how can we make a behavior easy. So this is an experiment I worked on a few years ago at the Behavioral Insights team. We were hosting a conference in London, and we couldn't resist the opportunity to do an experiment on sustainable behavior at the conference. So we worked with a catering company and asked people before they came to the conference to choose which foods they would like from the menu. And once they were at the conference, they could actually choose anything, but they saw this menu ahead of time. This was one version. You see it's separated into a meat and fish section at the top, and then a vegetarian section. So we're kind of highlighting the meat and the plant-based food. And we've got kind of longer, kind of more flowery, enticing descriptions of the meat and fish dishes. And then another group, the other half of people, saw this menu. So we're not distinguishing between the plant-based and the meat and fish. And we also have changed the way that the dishes are described. Again, it's exactly the same thing. They're just described in a different way. So we've got crunchy polenta chips with a choice of garlic, tomato, or basil dip, and this is listed at the front as well. And here we've got vegan polenta chips with mayonnaise, exactly the same thing. And you can probably guess which menu resulted in more people choosing plant-based food. Sorry, I've got this lag time here. Let's see, there we go. And so this control with the one on the left-hand side here, with the kind of boring descriptors of the plant-based food and segregating into its own section, was just under half of people choosing the vegetarian dishes, where it increased to 58% in this other menu here. So again, we didn't change anything about what was offered, just in the description and the way those choices were presented. So that's an example of making it easy. How can we make it attractive? So we've got a lot of examples in the Little Book of Green Nudges on how to kind of make things more attractive. And I think actually some of the elements I showed you in the menus on the previous page were also making it more attractive to choose plant-based food. But one thing that we didn't emphasize so much in the book, which I wanted to highlight here, is this idea of double nudges. So rather than just kind of nudging a consumer directly and putting the kind of burden on the consumer to make different choices, you can actually kind of harness consumers' preferences to nudge businesses or organizations to make changes. And so what do I mean by that? So let's think about sustainability or kind of certifications or labelings of food. So if you're a consumer, you might have to choose between, foods with dozens of different labels. You spend time in the supermarket figuring out what these things are. What if instead, rather than having each individual food item be labeled, supermarkets themselves got some kind of eco rating or sustainability rating based on the products that they carried? And if then consumers are interested in choosing more sustainable products, they would then just be choosing between shopping at supermarket A versus supermarket B versus supermarket C. And we could harness competition between organizations, between the supermarkets, to attract customers to encourage supermarkets themselves to stock more sustainable products, rather than giving the consumer this a lot of information to process. And if you think this is this might be difficult to implement, then it's actually already being done in a sense in other contexts. So when restaurants display food hygiene ratings in their windows, a result of a food hygiene inspection, at least in the US, this is exactly what consumers are doing. A restaurant that displays a low rating won't attract as many customers. So it's an incentive for the organization to do something differently. And if consumers are interested in sustainability, which I would argue that they are, then supermarkets might also have an incentive to display a high sustainability rating, and that would kind of drive up the sustainability of the products that they stock. So this is another way of making it more attractive for consumers to nudge consumers into buying more sustainably. Okay, so the next example or the next category in East is social. I just thought I'd throw this one in because it's a project I'm currently working on. It's not to do with sustainability, but it's obviously a very current topic. Harnessing social identity. So this is a project I'm working on, sending out reminder cards to people who have missed their appointment for a second vaccine dose for COVID. We're actually testing several different versions of these postcards. This one in particular is around kind of social identity. So we're really harnessing the kind of Alaskan identity by emphasizing Alaskan and kind of showing common summer activities that people like to do. We're saying more than 300,000 Alaskans have had both doses of the vaccine. So highlighting the social norms here, and again emphasizing people's identity. I don't have results for you, unfortunately. We are kind of just wrapping this up right now, and hopefully sometime in the next few weeks we'll find out how well this postcard has done relative to people receiving no postcard at all, or a couple of other different versions. So I'm really excited to see how this goes. But the reason why we chose a postcard with social norms is that social norms have been a really successful nudge in a lot of different contexts, from encouraging reduced energy use to more people installing solar panels on their house, and many other contexts. So then the last category in East is timely. And I think one really nice example of thinking about timing is that a given nudge can be more or less effective depending on when it's implemented. And so what do I mean by this? Well, this is a project that the Behavioral Insights team did. I wasn't personally involved in this project, but it was encouraging people to sign up for a bike sharing scheme in Portland, Oregon. And so this involved sending, the city had already set up this bike share, but the nudge involved sending out flyers with some kind of promotional incentive to people in the city. And so they looked at two different categories of people: those who had just moved into the area, and those who were already living there but had a bike sharing station installed by their house recently. So for both of those groups, the bike sharing was new, but what was different was whether the person had just moved into the area or whether the bike share had just been installed. And so which group of people was more likely to sign up after receiving these promotional flyers? So the people who just moved into the area were actually about 4 times more likely to sign up than the people who were already living there. And the reason for this is that the people who had just moved in had a whole kind of change of routine in their lives. They were figuring out a new commute. They were kind of building new habits. They were finding out new things about the area, rather than they were already kind of entrenched in their routines. And then this new bike sharing station was constructed. And I think this is a really powerful example of how important kind of routines and habits can be. And I wanted to end on this example also just to highlight the importance of university and college as a really pivotal time in shaping behaviors. Even though, and also actually the COVID-19 pandemic as this kind of big shift in habits and what is normal. So I think universities do have such an important role when students are, in a totally new environment. They're trying new things, they're finding things out for themselves. the potential for kind of adopting sustainable behaviors that then do become habits and routines and stick later in life is so huge. So that's why I think it's so exciting to be designing and implementing nudges at universities and colleges. So with that, I'll wrap up and hand over to the next speaker, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end of the session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jessie. I definitely had my neurons firing, and I hope everybody had the same similar feelings as well. And I'm also glad that you explained the framework, EAST framework, because it's really how the Little Book of Green Nudges was structured. And it's such a logical and easy way to identify and choose appropriate nudges. So thank you so much once again. So today we're trying to influence the lifestyles of 200 million students enrolled in higher education today. Well, there is a company which is making everyday life better for 800 million customers last year alone. Please welcome Mr. Andreas Ans. He leads the climate agenda for Ikea Group, the worldwide Ikea franchisor, and the full Ikea value chain from raw material extraction to product and end of life. He's the main spokesperson for climate internally and externally for the total climate agenda at Ikea. He's also the pillar behind Ikea's strategic commitments and targets to go climate positive by 2030 by reducing more greenhouse gas emissions than the Ikea value chain emits while growing Ikea's business, of course. Andreas, please tell us how a company of such a large scale with 220,000 employees set an ambitious and bold targets in line with science to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here as well. So thank you for having me. I feel like listening into the previous presentation where we are more working with how to get people to think fast, maybe what I'll present more is how to stop people from thinking fast and more thinking slow. But I'll be on it shortly as well. So the key then is like, how do we actually from Ikea side work with our climate agenda? Can you see my screen just to double check? Or is it yes. Black? No, it's okay.
Perhaps
good.
You can make it a full screen.
Ah, yes, you saw it the other way
Thank
around.
You.
Sorry. What would a presentation be in?
Although, I mean, this is clear enough, actually, if you feel like
it's possible to.
Like,
no
yeah,
worries.
okay.
Okay, is it better now?
Absolutely, thanks.
Wonderful. Okay, so back to the topic of the presentation. So we at Ikea have committed to become climate positive by reducing more greenhouse gas emissions than the whole value chain without using any offsets. And this is, of course, quite a massive undertaking as well. And connecting to how we think fast, I think what we have perceived previously is when people then think this can't be done, it's impossible. And I will show how to actually break that code and get people to understand it can be done. And then based on that, what are the main focus we should actually address? And then when you know the main movements, then you can also add in a lot of nudges connected to it. So see if it is a presentation of like the thoughts behind you actually start nudging people so that you make sure that you nudge them in the right direction and what you nudge them on actually has that systemic effect on your footprint. So let's go. And then the question is, I mean, how would you actually get an organization to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030? Because this is a key part of our commitment to become climate positive. Because we all, companies, organizations, nations, we all need to cut emissions in half by 2030 to be in line with the 1.5 degree commitment. And of course, it's kind of about the massive things. And I said, most people think, well, this is not possible. The IKEA business will grow by a factor of 3 until 2030. So how can we reduce it in half? Well, I mean, the key is then here that you're working like very rational and working very analytical about the footprint. As Hans Lusing said, to be a very serious possibilist. And here, I mean, also use your emotions as an inner fuel, because this is a challenging agenda. Even if you know all the answers of what to do, it is a lot of hard work connected to it. So you can also still work emotionally. And then once you have the main movements ready, then it's all about pushing people in that direction. But this is the backbone to that work. So hope you find it interesting. Connecting to the whole work that we're doing with IKEA, because this is where it all starts before I share how to demystify the whole agenda. Our vision is to create a better everyday life for many people. As Mari said as well, I mean, we have 800 customers today, and by 2030, we aim to inspire and enable more than 1 billion people to live healthy and sustainable lives within the boundaries of the planet. Now, that's 10% of the world population that we would like to affect, so it's kind of huge. And what better vision then is then to base on a sustainability strategy. This is fantastic. It's not only like people's lives as we have here, but also our impact on climate. So this is a key contribution to climate change that we have today. So we're part of the problem, but also then part of the solution. And by actually securing and knowing how we can actually solve things, we can also secure that we can nudge people within the organization, and we can also secure that we nudge customers. But the key is like knowing what should we focus on, because obviously just leading the climate agenda, it's infinite amount of stuff that you can do, but what are the things which actually matter? And that is what we struggled with when we set our goals. One thing is to do what science tells us, but how do you get people to actually know what they need to do? And it is a really scary topic. I think also what I'm facing as well is like people are more and more worried about climate change. So it's also like that fear can also get people to be pacified. And for us, it's really important then to be action-oriented and also remaining positive. Not in a naive way, you can still recognize how difficult this is and how serious it really is. But at least by taking action in the right direction, you can remain positive and also having an element of influence of what you're trying to do. And also pushing people to make really every year count now up until 2030. So how do we do it? This is the footprint that we need to address. This is the whole IKEA climate footprint, all the way from the raw materials and materials we use in our products, how the products are produced, the transport, customers travel to and from the stores, electricity consumption at home, and end of life. This is our footprint. This is what's caused by the IKEA business, and therefore it is also our responsibility. So how do you actually do to reduce this in half? On the left-hand side, you have a whole steel industry, kind of a hard to debate sector going on there. If you're looking to product use at home, a lot of electricity consumption. How do we work with that? The food that people eat in our stores. How do we change that and push people into more plant-based food? So this is really a lot of different industries, topics, upstream, downstream, the supply chain, everywhere. And we need to collectively cut this in half. While if we don't do anything, this will all triple by 2030. So this is quite a huge task, and we need to slice the elephant, as I say here, to really make it manageable for people to address. So what we did, we actually worked very analytically with this one to address the main causes. And I will actually zoom in on the production part here. So those are the factories which produce the IKEA products you can buy in the store. So the bookcases, the kitchens, the tables, all the glasses, you name it. That is how we produce the products. So by zooming into this one, now it became a lot of numbers all of a sudden, but don't get scared. So on the left-hand side, you find the greenhouse gas emissions, the climate footprint coming from the production of products. On the right-hand side, this is the energy consumption connected to it to actually produce products, because they need energy in the production process. This is a specific supplier, and you can easily see that is a supplier in Poland, because you see from an energy perspective, we're using kind of the same amount of electricity as natural gas here. And then this is diesel used for forklifts, but less on that. But if you compare the footprint from electricity and natural gas, you see a lot is happening. It's a lot of footprint coming in from electricity, well, less in natural gas. Meaning this is a lot of coal-based electricity. So you can easily think out this is Poland, which it is, because I know this is a real supplier. Coming back to our challenge, we're growing, as all businesses are, most of them at least. And if we don't do anything, we will just increase our footprint, or this supplier will increase its footprint quite drastically. And we actually wanted to reduce the footprint a lot more than just cutting it in half by 2030. So we want to reduce it by 80% by 2030. And if you show this to a normal purchaser or somebody who is responsible of this supplier, they will say this is completely impossible. I mean, our trend is heading in one direction and you want to pretty much decimate our climate footprint. Are you insane? This can't be done. And we need to then get people to understand, well, it's not that hard. I mean, it's hard, but it's not impossible. So we then started to simulate creating what-if analysis. Like, what is the impact of different actions? So if we want to nudge them, we want to at least secure that we're heading in the right direction. So energy efficiency, a lot of focus. I mean, reduces energy consumption. That's nice, but the climate footprint, it's reduced, but we're still heading in the wrong direction. So we kind of just become less bad, you can say. We're not really good here. So yeah, important, but not a true game changer. What happens if we change that natural gas boiler, which we're using to heat the building, and change it to geothermal heating? We still need to heat the building, so the energy consumption is the same, but we have pretty much phased out the climate footprint of natural gas. So we're moving towards the right direction, though we're still increasing our footprint. So we're really not trending in the right direction. It's just, once again, less bad. So what more can we do? Well, we can just secure renewable electricity, because as I said, this is in Poland. Electricity is mainly based on coal. And what happens then if we switch to new energy installations from wind farms? So we actually take out that climate footprint completely. We still use electricity because electricity is kind of a nifty thing, but it has no impact on climate. And right here, you see, we completely knock out a huge part of the climate footprint, and adding up to the actions we had previously, we reach that 80% goal. And now we just need to do the final push and just electrify those forklifts, which were using fossil diesel, and now they're electrically driven and running on wind power. And pretty much we've actually taken out the whole footprint by 2025, 2026. So by doing this, we can then have strategic roadmaps for everything we would like to do. And now the nudging starts, because if we really want to push people, we can then create nudges around like how to promote renewable electricity purchase. How do you create like almost like a voice speaking in people's heads, but to work with energy efficiency, what is the role of electrification of vehicles, etc. We can create all of those narratives based on that, but the basis was this analytical approach. And that has been a huge success to making it concrete and then building these nudges on. And it's now I'm exemplifying it for climate, but it's valid for also parts of our range, and also how we would like to also address customers. Because there's many things you can do as a customer, but what are the main things you should actually address? So that was a bit of a crash course, but just one thing that came out of this was actually the plant-based meatball called huvudval, or main character directly translated, which is a plant-based meatball, where we actually just shifted it out. This is based on yellow peas instead of actual meat. 4% of the climate footprint, and now we're actively steering our customers to choose that one instead of a meat-based option, significantly reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So a bit of a crash course, but hope you found it entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Now tell us, you mentioned the famous Ikea meatballs going plant-based. Do you have plans to nudge customers to choose the plant-based meatballs rather than the meat alternatives? Or perhaps we can ask the audience for the ideas.
Oh yes, we are more than thankful for any type of advice. So just in my local Ikea store here in Malmö, in south of Sweden, we changed like all type of advertisement in the store, where it used to be meatballs, meatballs, meatballs. Now it's plantballs, plantballs, plantballs. And also, if you buy then meatballs in the store, you get a plant ball with a small flag on it as well. So you get to try and taste the plant ball as well. So even people who go like, I don't want to buy a whole plate of plant balls, they get to try one. And the taste is scarily similar to meat. And that is also the whole purpose of it as well. So also like nudging from advertisement, but also everybody get to taste the plant ball and see it's really delicious.
Oh, that's amazing. Experiencing it last, in your memory, I think, longer. So you remember how good it is. I must try that too. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to see a company of that scale going climate positive in its business operation, but also helping customers live sustainable by integrating sustainability into its product designs. I've seen their Ikea's shower heads that are designed to help customers save water use, which is, brilliant. Speaking of Ikea shower heads, if you have student dormitories or on your campus, Surrey University might have a brilliant solution to cut your water bill. Please welcome Dr. Javier Font. He's Professor of Sustainability Marketing at the University of Surrey, UK, specializing in sustainable production and consumption, SDG 12, in the tourism and hospitality industry. And he's the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Sustainable Tourism. He has consulted for several United Nations agencies, the International Finance Corporation, the European Commission, National Tourist Board, and WWF, amongst the others. Javier, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mari. So it's good that you would just speak about showers, because it seems to me there's an awful lot of work that we can do there. Let me just share my screen so you can see where I'm coming from with this. I'm going to take you through some work we've just done with a PhD student of mine who's now become a graduate assistant in our program. And essentially, we know that students take very long showers. Okay, students take that the showers of people who are in the age group of our students are at least twice as long as the showers that older adults tend to take. So 12 minutes compared to 6 to 7 minutes. And we have then been thinking about, well, how do we work with real-time feedback to get students to actually change their behavior? And so what we've done is we put together a behavioral intervention that provides essentially real-time feedback through a smart technology device. And then we have added persuasive communication to get people to change their behavior further. It looks a bit like this. This is what we install in showers at the halls of residence at the university. We've previously tested in a variety of hotels. We're also testing it in houses. What this thing does basically is it captures sound. Okay, it has no cameras, thank goodness for that. It captures sound, humidity, temperature, and uses all that information to realize that you have turned your shower on, and therefore a counter, the time essentially starts counting. And it displays how long you have been in the shower for. Together with this device, we have then tested different messages placed next to this device in the shower. So we have a plate with selfless or selfish values. We have plate with high or low effort. We have played with priming people to change their behavior. We have used social norms, because actually many behaviors that we've got are known by others, but mostly what we do in the shower is not known by anybody. You probably don't know how long you spend in the shower, and you also don't know how long people tend to spend in the shower, or indeed what they have. So all of this information, we've used different forms of trying to change individuals' behavior, and we have done different tests to see which ones work. You can see that in a single message, a lot of different combinations came into play. When it came to then installing devices in our university halls, we installed 92 devices to start with. We installed them in just one area of the campus where all of these different houses the students were in were exactly the same, had the same water pressure, students paying the same amounts per room, and therefore it was easier for us to control the behavior of the students. And what we basically found is that in our halls of residence in the UK, the average length of student showers was 10 minutes and 36 seconds. And this was based on over 500 showers. We captured the sound in control rooms. So essentially in the control rooms, the device was placed there, but there was no message telling you what you should do. And the display screen was hidden. Therefore, you could not see how long you were there for. It simply was a sign saying that this is a humidity control, which happens to also be true. It's just that it does a lot of other things as well. What we then did is we looked at comparing this control time, so 636 seconds, compared to providing some feedback and then different kinds of feedback, an informative message, a selfish message, just feedback alone, or feedback plus a selfless message. You can see on the far right-hand side that we actually save 34% of water, essentially by adding this device, plus a message that said, water essential for life, a quick shower at Surrey has water running for 5 minutes 50. How quick will you beat the clock? Water conservation starts with you, make a difference. 34, nearly 35% of water saving. And obviously the saving that comes with the energy of using that water, heating that water, is a huge amount of money, okay? In fact, when we did this in tourist accommodations, what we found that most people in tourist accommodations, you have 1, maximum 2 people staying in a hotel room, and we were saving the equivalent of $62 per bathroom per year in a hotel, which is not bad. But obviously, when you're comparing with a massive $182 per device that we installed in our halls of residence, this is huge. We were looking at 34 cubic meters of water that we saved per shower cubicle per year. This is based on 1 shower cubicle being shared by 4 students. We're now doing further tests to see what happens with en-suite bathrooms. It's important for me to tell you, this is not the behavior change on the first week of installing these devices. This is the behavior change after 3 months of collecting data. This is not just the result of the initial novelty value of the device. Okay, these are the result of having spent quite some time in there already. And it's worth saying that this is a device that we installed partway through the year. So what Jennifer was saying earlier on, that if you install these devices at the very beginning of the academic year, we expect that you'll have an even greater saving, because when the students arrive on campus, they will see this for the first time and they'll just believe that this is part of what's normal in this particular context. So essentially, this is the savings that we found in what we could call worst case scenario. They'd already established habits and you already have essentially established those habits, but then you have actually managed to change your behavior over a period of time, because you've seen these in your showers for at least 3 months. So what we've seen here is the students respond very well to the experiment. Okay, we captured this long-term behavior change. We even found messages from students on Instagram taking photos of the device, saying how amazing it was that the university was taking this seriously and they were making these kind of changes. The university estates team, and we have a living lab that essentially tries to create positive changes on our campus, but also in the local community, were fully supportive. The return on investment data that we provide to the university make it very exciting. Essentially, the payback period of a device, if you install it based on the conditions that we found at the University of Surrey, will be a payback of less than 1 calendar year, less than 9 months of having students on campus. And after that, essentially, the full saving is for free. We're now working with a company that produces these devices to try to reduce the cost of production. And so what we've done now is we've installed another 500 devices on our campus to do further tests on how to improve the effectiveness of our messages and the presence of the devices. We know, therefore, that the ROI is very good. And we know that, obviously, to start with, there is time invested on our side to design the study and to analyze the data. So we had one research fellow, Pablo, working approximately 4 months full-time to design the study and to analyze the data. But the good news is, once we can essentially publish the journal article from this, and we can tell you which is the message that works best, at least in the UK context, it's very easy for you to reproduce that message in your own university, and you don't need to do data analysis. You already know that the saving is pretty much guaranteed. We would love to work with you guys to do tests on how messages could work well across different cultures and whether the test that we have used in Europe will be useful elsewhere. We know, as I say, that the time required to install the equipment is really nothing. Essentially, it comes with a sticky and you remove that, the SIM card comes already plugged in, so you just basically install it on the wall. It takes longer if you want to do experiments because you need to be able to identify which device will have which message attached to it and so on. If you just want to save money without collecting further data, it's very simple for you. And we have a website where we've uploaded all this information. It's called showeringsmartly.com. And we think that that's going to be quite a useful site for you to go and collect more information and all the things we're doing in relation to this. In that same site, you can find data about the actual company that we're working with, who they are. I've tried to keep it short because I thought questions and answers would be more exciting than me banging on about the topic. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you so much. Maybe quickly, was there a difference between the high effort versus low effort messages on the shower duration?
Yes, high effort messages were much better than low effort. And this is in part because people don't have an anchor or what is normal behavior in a shower. So if you told people that the average length is for 6 minutes, people aim for 6 minutes. Whereas if you told them that the average length was 4 minutes, they actually aim for 4 minutes. And there was no difference according to gender. Now, I cannot tell you what it is that boys do in the shower when they've got hair like mine. None of us probably want to know, but boys and girls spend about the same length of time in the shower cubicle as each other.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing an innovative way to save water for students and also tourism accommodations. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure you will get a lot of requests from universities to use your methodology. Now let's find out how these nudges are actually being used on real campus. Please welcome Miss Amy Kadri. She's a sustainability coordinator of the University of Rochester. Amy, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and share my screen and get this up for you. So I'm putting it in full screen mode. Let me know if it's good.
It is good.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to talk about an initiative that we implemented several years ago called the Go Green Pledge. But first, just a little bit about the University of Rochester. We are located in upstate New York along the Genesee River. I always joke that our spring semester should really be called the winter semester because we do have quite a bit of snow and cold weather for most of what we call our spring semester. Okay, our student body there is summarized for you on the left. We have roughly 6,000 to 7,000 undergraduate students and about 5,000 grad. We also have a medical center, and which includes a hospital and a large research center. And we actually have about 25,000 employees, which makes us a little unique from other universities since our actual staff population is bigger than our student population. And as many universities and colleges can relate, we are very decentralized. My position is the only full-time position that's dedicated to sustainability, and I work for university facilities and services, so we don't have a central office for sustainability. So the Go Green Pledge was an initiative that we came up with really to engage and inspire and empower individuals to make positive change and to centralize the efforts in a really decentralized system. So especially, you know, with the pandemic happening and everything, a lot of people were feeling helpless, and we saw an increase in our engagement activities during this time because it seemed like people really wanted to do whatever they could that was in their power to make a difference. So that's the whole basis of this pledge. You know, what can everybody do in their own individual lives and areas that will count? So here's the process, just a really brief overview of how we started. And I do want to say that we launched this years and years ago, back in 2009. So this is by no means new, but it is still ongoing. And we are having talks as one of our green nudges to revamp it, take a fresh look, because a lot of the things that we have on here have become a little bit outdated. So it started with a small team, a group of people from facilities and services, and also someone from university communications, because it is web-based, online, something that you would sign up for. And the first thing that they did was to establish various focus groups, because again, being very decentralized and having populations very different, we wanted to know, what did things look like from a staff perspective, and how is it different for faculty and students and, our medical center employees, and also our community and friends. So we had focus groups from individuals from all of those populations come in and just talk to them, about where they thought they could make sustainable behavior change just in their daily lives. So the pledge item categories were really kind of broken up into energy, waste reduction, transportation, resource conservation, purchasing, and then also education and awareness. So the pledge items could be slightly different depending on who you were at the university. So for example, students might have, the opportunity to do their laundry on campus, where most staff are not doing that. So there's an item in there about doing your laundry with cold water. The next step after we had the pledge all set up and made public was branding it and getting it out there. And that is what's still ongoing today. So we use our Go Green with Rocky logo for all things that are sustainability related on our campus. Rocky is our mascot. So we had buttons that were made that said, Go Green with Rocky, I made the pledge, and also Post-it notepads that people could use. Staff really like those that had the website of the pledge right on it. So this is just an example of what the online pledge looks like if you were a student. So again, there's some different items in here, like reducing water consumption in the bathroom. And, not everybody brushes their teeth and takes showers on campus. So this is another thing that was specific to students. But as you can see, there is, an item in bold that, I pledge to do this, and then we give them a little bit more information and facts about why that's an environmentally friendly thing to do. So really, most of the items on here are very simple. And we have a lot of students who go through this and say, oh, I do all this stuff anyways, it's really easy. And, then other times when we do the pledge with faculty and staff, we find the opposite. They're less willing to give up their water bottles and things like that. So there's definitely a difference in the populations that we have here. Oops, a little too far. Okay, so the benefits and challenges of this type of initiative. Again, the benefits, it helps to centralize efforts in a very decentralized and siloed system. It inspires and empowers people to make positive changes at a level that makes sense for them. And it may lead to discussion of further improvements needed, which is always a good thing. Our motto here is Meliora, which means ever better. So we're always looking for ways to further improve. And this is easy to replicate. We actually took this method from Yale University. So I'm telling it to you today so that hopefully you can take it and transfer it to your university as well. Some of the challenges, though, is most importantly is measurable results are really difficult to quantify. I mean, obviously we can track how many people take this pledge and, the different items that they agreed to doing. However, actually tracking them among the different categories and linking it back to the pledge can be really difficult. So example with energy consumption, one of the items is to turn the lights off in the dorm room if you're gone for more than 15 minutes. And we might see energy reductions in specific buildings, but there's also other factors involved. We don't really know if it's thanks to the pledge or if we had a milder winter, other things like that. So it can be kind of difficult to quantify. Keeping the momentum, especially for us, since we have had this for so many years, has been a challenge. And I will say that, we really had a decline in other interests, competing interests. So we haven't really promoted it that much the last few years, but it's definitely something that we are looking as our Green Nudge goals to get back out there again. And also, even though it's also a benefit, I put it here as a challenge as well, that it may lead to discussion of further improvements needed, because as everybody knows, that always means more work and more time. And we all know that time is precious among everybody. So again, it's ongoing. We have promoted this pledge in various events. It is based online, so we do put it on social media and our blog and all of those sources, but we find that the best way to really get it out there is at events. So again, with COVID, we had definitely a decrease in in-person events happening, which is improving a little bit now for us this year. So we do want to get back out there, but when people can come up to the table and you can really talk to them and engage them, that seems to make a difference. So we do it at student events. We also have a Green Reps program. So our Green Reps coordinator will go to different staff events and promote it there. So to date, we've had almost 2,500 people who have taken the pledge. So it's just kind of, slowly but surely gaining more support on that. And again, going forward, next steps that we want to look at are updating and revamping our pledge, making some of the items better. For example, a lot has changed over the years. And New York State now has a bag on plastic bags. So one of the things about bringing reusable bags to the shopping store is a little bit outdated now. It's something that you have to do almost unless you're paying for paper bags. And again, looking for ways to quantify our results. We have talked a little bit last year with our Green Nudges group about, asking people just to track. So more of like an honor system, how many times are you actually doing this, pledge the items that you agreed to do in the pledge, and, holding them a little bit more accountable. So it helps there and keep following up with them. All right, so again, that was just a really quick, brief overview. I know that we are over the time now for this webinar, but I am happy to talk to anybody and answer questions.
Thanks so much, Amy. Before this project started, you mentioned the limitation in getting the word out and actually influencing people to take actions, because the focus will be through social media platform. But it looks like you overcome that challenge and really reaching out through events. And so congratulations. Have you been able to get feedback from students who made a pledge?
Yeah, the students, we always look for them for new ideas too. So I feel like that's one of our next steps is, what else needs to be on this pledge? Because we did get a lot of feedback from students, particularly the ones who stop and talk to you and take the pledge are the ones who are eco-conscious anyways. So they said, oh, I do these things anyways. And, maybe not all of their friends did, but they did. So I think we need some more challenging items to add to it as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll be looking forward to hearing about your revamped version of the Green Nudges initiative. Is there anybody who would like to quickly share about your efforts or questions to any of the speakers? You could also write questions or direct that to us. So we'll ask the speakers as well. Would you like to speak? Any speakers who would like to speak as well?
Just making myself ready in case somebody has questions.
Okay, great. So hopefully we'll be able to share the presentations with the permission from the speakers, of course. And if you have any questions instead of this platform, you can direct that to us and we'll share that with the speakers. So I would like to thank the presenters for their time and expertise, and thank you to all the audiences tuning in today. If you're registered pilot campuses of this project, you will soon receive a template for you to share your progress or results of your actions on your campus. So we'll then also showcase all your brilliant work on your campus on our site as well. So if you have any questions, please contact us, and please take care, and bye now.